2, 1. So proportions, and in this video I'm just going to talk about kind of the most basic proportion possible. So scaling some quantity that you're measuring by a certain amount, and then trying to see, okay, so how much of that amount do I have? So most likely you see these as kind of proportions. So as you can see on the screen, 30% of $200. So how much is that? And you can have many other examples here. I'm going to just show you a few and we'll come back to these. So 3% of some number. Say you're counting maybe number of people. 1/8 of $150. 0.5 of 440 milliliters, and so on. How do these things work in terms of a proportion? The math behind it is really, really simple. The word of right here is always multiply. Now, let me just visually show you, okay, these 30% or a quarter of something, so that you can kind of compare what we're trying to do. So if you have, this 30%, you know that 30% is typically scaled, so let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, right? Where this would have been 100%, let's say this is 0%. Now, of course, we can have more than 100%, so you can certainly scale it much higher. But for this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, so where is 30% approximately fall? So 30%, I'm just kind of guessing, maybe it's somewhere around here, where this would have been 30%. Now, what are we trying to find 30% of? And this is the proportion. It's kind of like a scaling. Well, this exact same thing. So I'm going to copy this. All right. Let me duplicate it. And this is going to be our quantity. So that $200 that you see, and maybe what I'll do is I'll kind of color it in or switch the colors for this one, just so it kind of pops out at us. So let's do something like this. Okay, and we want the stroke, and I'll just put it into red. So that is my $200. $200 would have been the total, but what do I want? I want 30% of that. So notice that right here, so what I'm really doing is I'm trying to scale this. Okay, so here is $0, all right? And here is the 30% of the $200. And I'm interested, okay, so how much is that? Right? That's what I'm really trying to see. That's what these proportions and scalings and the using the word of, so 30% of something, a half of something, 0.2 of something. So you're always just scaling one and another. Now, within here, of course, you don't have to use percents. You can use, so basically there are 3 different things that you can use. You can use percent, right? As we did here, so that's 30%. You can use the same thing as a fraction. So instead of having it out of 100, we can have it out of a whole of 1, right? Where 30% just means 3 out of 10. So this would have been 10 out of 10 for the 100%. And then the other one is you can, of course, change these to decimal. So you can interchange a number between percent, fraction, and decimal in any way you like. Now, as a decimal, so it would have been, so 30% would have been just 0.3. We're dividing by 100. As a fraction, it would have been 3 over 10, where it basically comes from 30 over 100. So that's just the reduced fraction. And then here is your 30%, which is the scaling. And all of these are equivalent. Now, if you forgot how to change back and forth between percent, fraction, and decimal, I'll put up a link up above there because it's going to be useful for you in these. Now, that's what we're trying to do. Now, it turns out that 30% of this $200, this is going to be $60. And notice, 60 divided by 200, if you reduce this in terms of a fraction, it's going to give you 3 over 10, which is 30%. But how do we find that very quickly using these words of? Well, it turns out that you don't have to be drawing and comparing things. right? You don't have to be able to set anything up. All you have to do is you have to just take whatever it is, what portion of the quantity you want, and this word of just means multiply. And what you're going to do is the portion you want it either in a decimal or you want it as a fraction. And then you divide that decimal or fraction times your actual quantity of the whole, which in this case would be $200. So 30% is just equal to 0.3. The word of means times, and it's times of the total, which is 200. And it's going to give you $60, which is exactly what you wanted. So all of these problems that you have, these of proportions, is nothing else but a multiplication by some portion that you are interested in. Maybe that portion is 30%, maybe it's 5%, maybe it's a quarter, maybe it's 1/8. Now, the only ones you change to the decimal or a fraction are going to be the percents. If it's already in fraction or in decimal form, then you don't change anything. You just simply multiply by the quantity measurement that you are interested in. So let's take a look at some of these examples. So here, for this example, if you want to take 3% of 120, first of all of these words of in all of these examples, these in math, okay, in terms of the translation, is going to be multiply. So what you do is if you see a percent, you're going to change it back. Doesn't matter. Decimal or a fraction, whatever you're comfortable with. So now this, okay, as a decimal is 0.03. The word of is multiply times 120. And when you multiply these, you're going to get exactly what you want. All right, so in this case, it would have been, now you can pop your calculator up, 0.03, or you can do it in your head if you want to. That would have been 3.6. So this is 3.6. Now be careful, sometimes they ask you to round, so just round correctly, right? So whatever it is you want your final answers to be rounded. If you don't have to round, you can keep it. Now the second one, this one is not a percent, it's already in fraction form. So you don't have to do anything. You can just keep it as 1/8, or you can just change it to a decimal, which would be 1 divided by 8. And then that, okay, would have been 0.125. You can check. And then all you do is you multiply it. Now in this case, we're talking about money. So what would I do? So in this case, for myself, I can say, all right, if I'm comfortable in decimal, let me do that. Then I will multiply by 150. Okay, so let me just go back in here. Answer times 150. And I get my $18.75. What that is telling me, that 1/8 of $150 is about $18.75. That's what that is. All right. Now, and you can continue. If you wanted to do this, so you could, if you have a fraction button, you can enter it as a fraction. All right, so in this case, like that, and you would get exactly the same thing. So the only one that you really change and you worry about are these percents, which you're going to have to switch. So here, okay, and here, we have 2 of them, at least in these examples. Now, 0.5, so this one is going to be rather simple. It's already in decimal form, nothing to do. Of 440 milliliters. Now, 0.5 is a half. So this is going to be 220 milliliters. I don't need to take out my calculator. Okay, so what about the next one? This one is 4.5%. So again, this comes down to, can you change this back to a decimal? And that's the original, okay, thing that I was pointing out. Okay, you can go back to that link. So you're comfortable in changing between percents and decimals and fractions if necessary. So 4.5% really is 4.5%. And as a decimal, that's going to be that. Multiplied by 18 milligrams. So I don't know, maybe this is some medication or something. So this is, let me clear this, 0.045 multiplied by 18. And that equals to 0.81 milligrams. Again, I don't know if you have to round, but if they tell you to round, you certainly can round to whatever it is that they need. Here's the next one. Now, this one is a little tricky. Notice this is not a percent. This is already a number. Yes, it can be bigger than 1, right? So this basically means 8 1/3 times the 20,000. So this is going to be 8 1/3. So it's not a percent, so I'm going to just keep it. Times this 20K means 20,000. You can write it out like that if you want. And what does this equal? So how do I input this in? So this one is tricky. Please be careful, because what some students will do is they'll change this 1/3 because 1/3 is 0.333, and sometimes students will just say this, 8.3. And you're going to get it wrong, especially if you're going to have to be rounding, because it's not 8.3, it's 8.3 bar, right? It's 8.3333. Okay, so if you don't want to enter it as a fraction and you want to enter it as a decimal, put at least 6, 7 decimal places so that you're not running into a rounding error. So what I would do here is I would do this. 8 point, okay, let's say 3333. I'll try to enter as many as I can, times 20,000. And now I'll get my answer. Now this is money. Money we typically will round. So this is going to be $166,666.67. So money always round. If they don't tell you, you round to 2 decimal places because that's the cent value. So there you have it. And notice that it would have been a lot different if you just inputted this. 8.3 times 20,000. Look how much off you would have been. You would have been off by $666.67, right? And if you actually wanted that money, well, somebody would have been pocketed if you didn't round correctly. So here's the last one. This one is calories. Again, notice this one is a decimal, so it's not a percent, so you can just keep it. That's going to be that times the 2,500 calories equals, so that's just popping our calculator out, times 2,500. It's going to be 325 calories. Don't forget your units if they do have a unit. So that's of proportions. Meaning you're just scaling. You want some portion of the entire whole. That's what it's asking you of. So when they say 30% of 200, they say take a portion of the entire thing. And how much is that? Well, 30% turns out to be $60 of the $200. And you can do the same thing for all of these examples. So go through these on your own. Okay, and hopefully this has helped you to understand how to do these of proportions. Okay, thanks for watching. See you in a future video. Cheers, everybody.